Okay, I'm Pete Goodell. I'm an area IPM advisor located at Kearney Ag Center. Most of you know me. I've been in this business for about 35 years now myself. One of the things that, as Phil mentioned just briefly, UC's being hammered like everybody else is. Extension has been doing fairly well relative to the budget, but one of the things we're faced, as you all know, is the number of retirements we're getting. And so we really need to be constantly refilling those positions. We're doing a fair job of it, but not quick enough. So anything, there is, by the way, right now we've got 120 proposals out there for positions that we internally have suggested, and we really look forward to, and the administration is looking forward to, stakeholders getting on there and making comments about any of those positions that you feel are important. So that's just a pitch there. If you need more information about that, just contact me. So I'm going to talk a little bit, very briefly today, about some cotton pest management issues. It's going to be brief because there really aren't any. We're in really good shape this year, not only in cotton, but a number of places. So I'm going to really kind of make that brief, and I think Dan's going to follow me, so we're going to kind of do a tandem thing here where we're talking about where the crop is developing and what this means, for my case, in Lygus. I would suggest for those of you who are in the sun, come on in. I mean, this is no sense in doing that. That's only mad dogs and Englishmen out there. And even they're in here, it looks like. There's a handout there with a graph, which is right here. And this is just a summary of the data that we've taken. And I use the we in a very large way. Luis actually has taken, but he, Jenny, and myself have summarized down for this presentation. And it's going to look at percent retention on top of the cotton plant and on bottom. There are, correct me, Luis, 15 fields, 13 cotton fields?
I believe it's 14.
14, because in there somewhere. So 14 cotton fields, and these are the averages we have. First thing I want to show you here is some Lygus numbers. And the square here on your chart and up here, that's the maximum number that was found that week. So you can see that we had some counts that were up in the 10s, treated, dropped back down, or back up. And that's a particular situation. We can't seem to keep them coming out of the alfalfa, even though we're leaving strips out there and everything else. But on average across the area, you can see that we've been pretty much below 5. And that's and down around actually 1s, 2s, and 3s over this period. And that's not uncommon. We're finding that all over the valley right now. I'm talking to seed alfalfa growers down in Lake Bottom. It says one of the lightest years they've seen for Lygus. So overall, it's been a very, very good year from the standpoint of low Lygus populations. I'm not sure that Manuel and others will say it's been a great year for them, but they've got other things they can deal with in terms of crop protection. So what does that mean to the plants? Well, the plants, we had a delayed planting, as everybody knows, but the planting went in fairly tight, so almost everything went in together within 3 weeks. We've had great weather. Even though it's gotten hot, it's cool, the evenings haven't been that bad, and our retention is quite phenomenal. So you can see that on the bottom 5, first position, fruiting position, we're holding, even now, we're over about 84% on the bottom. And that should pretty much stay there because those bolls now are getting to the point where they're not going to get bothered by hardly anything else. And the top retention, which is the blue, is continuing to hold at about the same amount, around 83 to 84% right now. So that's extremely high for this time of year. And one of the questions that's been coming up is, well, if it's that good, I want to hold all that fruit. I absolutely want to hold that fruit so I can do like the Australians do and get 6 bales. Well, probably that ain't going to happen, okay? And what I wanted to show there's 2 things I want to show here. First of all is the fact that our Lygus thresholds, as we've sort of set them up from a suggestion area, is low in the beginning. That's in June, during that early fruiting period. We've got good data both in recent studies and in studies of over 15, 20 years ago. This early period is where Lygus gets the greatest impact on cotton, where you get your greatest result from treating. Then once we move into July and August, it becomes we see less of a relationship to Lygus and yield. And so our thresholds go up to 5 to 10 about this time of year, and more than 10 per 50 sweeps after we get into August. So Right now, even a 10 count isn't that severe, depending upon your set and where you are in terms of where the maturity of the plant is. And we're really looking at this point too to look for reproduction and the presence of nymphs in the field, so it's not just a temporary visit by some ligas that are moving out of a crop but going to move back into it. So you can see we start low and we go high from the number of ligas per sweep or per 50 sweeps we can take. These three lines just represent what the expected top retention on the first position is if you had 70, 50, or 30% retention on the bottom. So here's a real bad situation where the bottom fruit didn't stick, and you can see that the odds of holding the top of the top fruit on the plant, it goes out, the higher fruits you expect to hold more later, but everything here, that's what I want to show here, is just this decline. Everything drops down because of the relationship between the vegetative growth and the reproductive growth. Once the plant flowers, once you have those bolls, that plant is going to say, this is where the stuff is going. It's going to the bolls, it's going to the fruit. That's where my emphasis is, and I'm going to stop the vegetative growth. So we see those blooms start to climb up the plant because it's not putting out new vegetative. It's beginning to go into cutout, it's beginning to slow, and you see those blooms begin to climb up the plant. So a lot of that stuff that's on there physiologically is not going to hold anyway. So that's why these guidelines were set up for the Acela that says, this is a 70% retention. We're actually at an 80% retention, so this would actually even be a little bit lower. And so it's saying that even at, we're at about 11, 12, 13 nodes right now. So on average, you'd expect to hold on that first position about 40% of your fruit at this particular time. We're holding already on the top 90%. So a lot of the fruit we're holding up there is not going to stick. So a few that the ligas take at this point aren't really going to impact us much. So that's the whole point I'm trying to make here, is that physiologically that plant's not going to hold everything anyway, and we need to be aware of that and just kind of keep pushing it on as best we can and setting as many fruit as we can on the particularly with Pima on the second, third, fourth positions if we can. So that's where I'm going to I think I'm going to sort of hold it here. The only thing I remind everybody of, I don't know that I've seen a couple of places around that had a few aphid. I haven't heard of any whitefly. Those are the things next month we really want to be watching for with the quality. And last year there were a lot of complaints, or a few complaints, particularly in the south part of the valley, about late season mites. So just another one to kind of keep in the back of your mind. But last season we also had a lot more applications going on for ligas during this period and back in June. So pest management wise, looks like we're riding right along, and things are looking good for us. The crop is setting amazingly, unless somebody's got some other opinion of that, and you can argue that with Dan, because Dan's been the one who's been looking at the crop. So that's all I had for pest management wise, and particularly with ligas. So can I take any questions real quick? Yes?
In 2009 we didn't have much rain, but I can't remember what the bug situation was like in 2009. It seems like I've never seen anything like this before with this little mite and this little ligas. Have you ever seen anything like this before? And what
yeah. I think we had that. I think what's different about 2012 is the fact that there was such a distance between during the whole winter, and we only got started rainfall in February. We had a very, very dry period for ligas, and they had to come out of the hills sometime in December, January, and they just dispersed where they could in the valley. And I just think we just lost that really green bridge that takes them from winter through spring to summer. And even though the safflower, for an example, was planted on time in February, it didn't seem to accumulate a whole lot of them either. So I think it was really the key that, what I was telling people, there's sort of an inverse relationship between when you're kind of struggling to find water, you don't generally deal with the bugs. But when you have loads, plenty of water to go around, it seems like there's always a lot of insects. Seems like they're going to nail your pocketbook either way. So, and I can't specifically remember 09, but I can go back and look at the data and see what just how widespread it was. But it was this is pretty interesting to me relative to the number of crops that aren't reporting problems. That's for sure. And not only ligas, but worms and aphid and everything else. Tom?
Yeah, usually the strips we put in the alfalfa are just boiling with ligas after the first time we strip it, and we haven't had them all year. They haven't accumulated.
Did everybody hear that comment? the fact that Bowles Ranches, Bowles Farm actually, like a lot of other growers, leave strips there in the alfalfa for a habitat to draw the ligas in, hold them, let them move back into the alfalfa once it starts being irrigated. And it usually just boils out with ligas, because our studies have shown we can triple the density of ligas in those strips compared to the field in average prior to cut. And this year you just haven't seen them. Right. So it's just, they're just not there.
And I've only treated the safflower once, and it's still usually treated twice.
You know, Lake Bottom I think has gone twice, and they usually go 3 times. So yeah, it's been good that way. So it is a little much lower. You know, your comments can support the fact that it's a lower population for sure. Oh, Phil?
It's the wrong time of the year, but I got a fertility question. Are we going to have is there a section on fertility later?
I don't know, but there's a guy who knows more about fertility than I do.
We can bring that up. Absolutely.
Well, we were just talking about it last week. It's the wrong time of the year, but has there been any more research as to the usefulness or lack of usefulness of applied humates?
Applied humates?
Yeah.
Well, that's very specific.
Well, there are all these various humic acid, concoctions that.
Right. I think I'm gonna punt on this one, and I'm gonna tell you that there has been some work, a limited amount of work, that does demonstrate the foliar use of humates in cotton, and there has been some mixed results. I wouldn't say there's anything definitive that I'm aware of, at least in the UC system, where we've demonstrated a consistent improvements in the use of foliar humates. Is it the foliar application?
Or soil applied.
And there's soil applied, and I don't know of much work at all that's been done on some of the soil applied materials. So that might be one for us to look into, but I don't think, I'm not aware of much of a research base on.
Well, it would be one to look
cotton.
into, because it is. I mean, it's a big economic factor, and that stuff is being used a lot. But it may be doing no harm. It may be doing good. It may be like a rabbit's foot that is nice, but it's great for the guy who sells the rabbit's foot. I just don't know. But it used to be that those things were kind of on the periphery, and now it's getting to be serious money that's spent all around the valley in a variety of crops on these things, and it would be useful to know if they did anything.
Thanks.
Luis?
Yeah, I had a question. Is there any kind of data showing the amount of alfalfa planted this year compared to, say, 2011, 2010?
Dan, you got anything about that? Acreage of alfalfa?
Yeah, the indications are that the acreage is approximately up by about 5% statewide, or somewhere in that range. And it's, of course, the story isn't really over yet, because the fall planting is coming up this fall, and so that a lot of the estimations are that we're up a modest amount based upon relative value of different crops and so forth. When you get cotton having trouble, people move into alfalfa a little bit, or vice versa. And so I think that's probably a pretty good estimate for next year. The question is, that'll do to the price, and that's another question. But usually a 5% acreage, I don't think that's going to have a huge effect on price, because there's a lot of demand factors out there with the corn price and so forth that are going to actually be pretty important, with the exports increasing and the higher price for corn. And so I think a 5%, if we had a 10 or 15% increase in acreage, I'd be more worried about the price crashing. But with a 3 to 5 or 6% increase in acreage, I don't think it's going to happen. That's my opinion. Phil, I don't know, or Cannon, what does your prognostication say?
Don't have one.
Yeah.
Corn's going to be dangerous to do that.
It's
about as far as I'm willing to go.
Got more cotton questions for Pete?
Or cotton pest management, because Dan will cover some more cotton questions.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.